Oh, hi. I'm Josh O'Brien. I'm at the world famous comedy store right now. I'm going to be on a podcast called GoatVsFish. I have no clue what the fuck I'm doing. I don't know what this means. It's going to be fun. I almost was a goat. I made it to first class. Almost chief in the Navy. That would have been the Goatlocker. Maybe I can make there honorably. I don't know. But hopefully I can do this podcast honorably. Maybe I'm just going to be in here fence sitting, whatever the fuck that means. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Goat versus... Fuck yes, goat versus fish.
Fuck yeah.
Goat versus fish.
Cool. I guess the word would be summoned. You summoned me to goat versus fish.
Ah, yes, you are here to speak to goat versus fish. You are here to speak to goat versus fish, yes.
All right, so I speak to goat versus fish, but it's not like a fish fights a goat or anything like that?
Oh, it is goat versus fish. It is goat versus fish, yes.
All right, I'm confused. So, goat versus a fish.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes, it is cool. Some say goat versus fish is very cool, yes. And
I've seen a mongoose fight a freaking...
Well, it must have been goat versus fish. It must have been goat versus fish.
It was a different form. It was a mongoose versus a snake. But yeah, it's a form of goat versus fish, I think. But I don't think we're going to go fight to death or anything like that. We're just going to talk about fish and goats and fence. What's the fence thing? What's this?
Oh, we need not speak of the fence just now. We need not speak of the fence just now. Yes, there are plenty of verses for the fence sitter. The pitiable fence sitter, yes.
Yes.
Yes, you are new to the verses. You are new to the verses, yes?
Very new.
What do you suppose about goat versus fish? What have you heard of goat versus fish?
I really don't suppose much. I'm just like curious. You know what I mean? Like fish versus goat. It's not like they like do battle.
They do. Oh, they do.
They
goat
do.
versus fish has witnessed many mighty verses of goat and fish. Oh, yes, the horn of the goat, the fin of the fish. Yes, leaping,
is any of the battles
verses.
Like on Netflix or YouTube?
Ah, the Goat vs. Fish podcast is on the YouTube, yes. In the verses of the Goat vs. Fish podcast, the 39th verses, there was a verses between a goat and a fish. Oh, what a verses. Oh, what a verses it was, yes.
Which triumphed, the goat or the fish?
Goat vs. Fish will not say. You will have to listen to the Goat vs. Fish podcast to know, yes. It is one of the secrets
so it's
of
definitely
Goat
worth
Fish.
checking out to go back and look at the goat versus the fish. I spent an entire career trying to be a goat.
Oh, you did. Yes, Goat versus Fish wishes to hear of these verses. Wishes to hear of these verses. However. First, there must be the beginning of the beginning of the Goat versus Fish podcast.
All right, let's do this.
Yes, you listen to Goat versus Fish now.
Okay.
Listen to Goat versus Fish.
Like
yes,
right
learn
now,
the verses. Yes, learn the verses.
Roger that.
Versus Fish. What is happening? Yes?
Trifling.
Yes. The previous verses is acceptable verses? Yes. Thank you, yes.
Okay. Trifling. To keep the pimp hand heavy for people that are trifling? Is that how it works?
We do have to keep verses on this one album, Ani. It is so. But we said we would not speak of fence sitters just now. So let us move on to the beginning of Goat versus Fish.
So that's what a fence sitter is?
That is a fence sitter. That is a fence sitter,
So a fence sitter is ow.
It can be said. It can be said, yes.
All right. I'm still trying to figure this out. This is like I feel like a kid that just opened up a book of crossword puzzles and I just figured out what the fuck letters are. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, I guess I could spell cat here, but I have to spell FISH or GOAT. If I did spell a
now
cat.
Now that is Goat versus Fish.
Bam. Is anything Trump in goat versus fish?
It's so fence-sitterly. Listen to Goat versus Fish.
All
Listen
right.
now to
Send
Goat versus Fish, yes. Goat versus fish. In the beginning, there was goat versus fish. The goat fish. And Goat versus Fish said that there should be goat and that there should be fish. There is no alpha or omega. There is no black or white. There is no good or evil. There is only goat.
Slur! I'm sorry, I had to do it.
And fish. And goat versus fish. Welcome to the Goat vs. Fish podcast, recorded at the world-famous Comedy Store, Los Angeles, a place of Goat vs. Fish. Goat versus Fish speaks to you now, is trying to speak to you. Are you trying to speak to Goat versus Fish? You have many questions, yes? Who is Goat versus Fish? What is Goat versus Fish? Why is Goat versus Fish? But there is only one question. Are you goat or are you fish? Ponder it now. Who shall triumph, the goat or the fish? Let us find out on these verses of Goat versus Fish. Navy. Goat versus Fish is always learning about the ones who choose goat or fish. The ones often engage in false verses that do not seem at first to be goat versus fish. And in some of these verses, the ones do end one another. They end one another. Before they even hear the word of goat versus fish, before they even choose goat or fish, they are ended by one another. This is most pitiable to goat versus fish. It is all difficult verses. But Goat versus Fish is never to avoid difficult verses. So now, Goat and Fish, and even a fence sitter who does listen to the Goat versus Fish podcast, we shall learn of a one who did verses in the Navy. Verses of the sea. Let us dive as a fish, or leap as a goat, into the Navy verses. This verses, Goat versus Fish, speaks to a one, speaks to another one.
Oh, I can speak now?
Yes, you can speak to Goat versus Fish.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I got to choose like a goat or a fish?
Yes, it is for you to choose goat or fish. Have you ever
thought of like Viagra or something? You're trying to spread your seed of goat and fish.
Goat versus Fish is spreading the verses of Goat versus Fish. What is Viagra? Is it a goat or a fish that Goat versus Fish should know about?
I think it's probably a goat. Yeah, because there's a thing called horny goat weed, and I guess it acts just like it.
Are you very familiar with this Viagra goat? Very knowledgeable about this Viagra goat yourself?
No.
Then how do you claim to speak of it? That is very curious to Goat versus Fish.
Because I have CNN.
That is a place of many false verses, Goat versus Fish has heard, yes.
They're all false Goat versus Fish places.
Some verses, they do speak of goat and fish, and that is Goat versus Fish, yes, but many verses are false verses.
Are they the ones that don't believe in a goat or a fish?
Those are the ones that are trying to convince the ones, yes, that there is some other thing other than goat and fish and Goat versus Fish. We know all things are goat and fish and Goat versus Fish.
Is there one more evil, goat or fish? Or is like one a good guy, one's like the light side of the force, and one's like the Sith and shit?
You have not learned your verses. Verses.
I'm trying to learn these things. I don't understand these. That's why I'm here. I'm seeking enlightenment, Goatfish, dude.
Goat versus Fish will repeat the verses that you have already heard. Yes, Goat versus Fish did say it in the beginning of the Goat versus Fish podcast.
There's no Omega, there's no black, there's no white. But I didn't know.
There is no good or evil, said Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish did say it. There is only goat and fish and Goat versus Fish, the Goatfish.
Right. I did kind of like check my email, but yeah, I guess like if I had to choose, I would choose goat. I'd be more of a goat than a fish.
Are you ready to say now to Goat versus Fish that you are a goat? Are you goat or fish?
Definitely a goat.
It is a goat. It is a goat. We celebrate this goat. We celebrate this goat. Oh, how we celebrate this goat.
Hell yeah.
Goat versus Fish thought that perhaps you would be a fish because you have spent so many verses of the sea, yes?
No, actually, like, here's the kicker. Like, most of my career, I spent with the Marine Corps and the Army and stuff like that, and I was on land. I didn't quite make the rank of chief, which is a goat, but all my jobs were chief related. So I basically did the job underpaid. And I'm like, you know what? All my homies that I retired and they're still kicking around, they're kicking around because they're goats and they're badasses. I'm not trying to disrespect the fish because you need the fish as well. So, I mean, yeah, if not, it would just be goat versus, and that's it. It'd just be goat versus.
That would not be Goat versus Fish.
Exactly.
The goat are versus the fish.
It'd be goat versus, and then the fence dude that's in there, Al.
Yes, that is a fence sitterly versus. You are
So-
beginning to understand goat versus fish.
So fence sitter is the person that's not in the room with us. Al's a good dude. We're also comedians, and we bounce ideas off of each other. And sometimes he asks me to do strange podcasts, and sometimes he asks me to do some really awesome podcasts. So far, this is pretty awesome.
Perhaps it is both strange and awesome. Is goat
Oh, it's
versus
very
fish.
fucking strange, dude. Very fucking strange. But it's still awesome. But yeah, it's way on the fucking strange as fuck spectrum. Are you a fish or are you a goat?
Are you asking goat versus fish?
Or you are goat versus fish? So
I am
you
goat
are-
versus fish.
So you are neither, but you are all.
You are clever in your
What?
verses. You are clever in your verses, goat. Oh, this goat so wise about goat versus fish.
I'm just trying to figure shit out.
Now, goat versus fish was under the verses. I thought it heard from the Fensitterly one that in your verses it was mostly Navy verses, but now you say it is not
No,
so.
no, I was Navy, but the thing is I was a dirt sailor. In other words, like I never did any time in 20 years on a ship.
You are not at sea. You are not
Never
at sea.
once at sea.
This is why goat versus fish is so confused about the ones who choose goat or fish. It would seem to goat versus
The
fish
goat
that
versus
if it
fish
would be a
chose me.
navally one, that it would be at sea with the fish. And
Does
yet
it?
now you say you were on the land of the goat, all the verses, all the
Yeah.
verses.
I spent 20 years on the land of the goat. You know, I was trying to make it in the Goatlocker. Didn't quite get there. But I always had a job of a goat. So I got nothing but respect for the chief's mess. So I will say goat.
We celebrate this goat. We celebrate this goat. Goat versus
What-
fish does not know why they would not let you be a goat.
Well, the thing is like they were downsizing the military. They took a third away of everything that I was doing. You know, there's only 600 people in the entire military that do my job. All the military, only 600 that do Navy Steelworkers job. And it was 900. So when they downsized a third of us, there was no promotion. I was just lucky to still have the job. So I ain't complaining. Matter of fact, I'm happily retired. I did my thing and now I tell dick jokes and get paid for it. That's fucking cool.
You spread humorous verses.
Yes, I do.
Yes, tell us of these humorous verses. You do spread these humorous verses here at the Comedy Store Los
Here at the
Angeles, a
Comedy
place
Store,
of goat
Los
versus
Angeles?
fish. Yes.
This-
Let us take a verses to learn of your verses at the
Oh,
Comedy
I
Store Los
appreciate that.
Angeles. Yes.
About 10 years ago, I started hanging out here. And next thing you know, I kind of got into comedy backwards.
It was fish versus goat.
Fish versus goat. They're like, you should do comedy because I'm telling war stories and cracking everybody up. And then, sure enough, I did an open mic and I was still on active duty in the military and
Two
transferred.
verses at once. Two verses at once. Is this
Yeah.
simple verses or was this difficult verses?
It was difficult because, trying to balance two totally different yin and yangs of the career. Comedy is more a liberal thing and warfare, war fighting is more of a conservative thing. So totally different friends, totally different groups of people, totally different mentalities. You just had to balance them both.
Yes, what could be more different than a goat and a fish? One is versus the fish, the other is versus goat.
Right. And then all the fence sitters that are in between just don't understand what the fuck is going on.
See, you understand the fence sitter. Yes, they are sitting on the fence simply watching the verses from afar, not choosing goat or fish.
No, they're just fence sitting. They're like, "Ugh," you know what I mean? Like, that's exactly what they sound like, too. "Ugh." It's crazy, the sound of, you'd think that'd be the goat sound, but that's actually the fence sitter. "Ugh." That's the fence sitter sound.
If you do make the sound of a fence sitter, do not become a fence sitter yourself, goat.
Oh, I won't. I'm pretty sure that I am a goat.
Small ones who are listening, yes? Now is not the verses to listen to the Goat versus Fish podcast. What you are about to hear is the sound of a fence sitter. The sound of the fence sitter.
Ugh.
Oh, it's so unpleasant to Goat versus
I
Fish.
know.
Oh.
Either that or when Al says
No.
something.
Perhaps you felt somewhat fence-sitterly yourself when you wished to be a goat, but the ones who are with you would deny you goat, and you had to be fish.
I felt like, well, hey, I did the best I could. It was frustrating at times, but you know what? I fucking loved what I did.
Now, you spoke with many of the ones who were at the Sea of the Fish, yes? You must have known them, yes? They were at the Sea of the Fish, the navally ones.
Oh, like the fleet side of the house? Yeah. Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, I was at an amphibious construction battalion, and the Fish of the Sea, those people were part of there, the bosun's mates and the real Navy guys. And yeah, they're cool. Just not my crew. You know what I mean? I'm more on the goat side than the fish side.
Some call themselves goat. The others cannot be goat, and so they must be fish, yes? Tell us of how one becomes a goat in the verses of the navally ones and how it's different from Goat versus Fish?
Sure. Like, you go through a place called MAPS, Military Entrance Processing Station, and then you sit down with a person called a classifier. After you took a long test called the ASVAB, which is Armed Service Vocational Aptitude Battery Test. And then that will say, okay, these are the things you qualify for, the jobs you got. And then when you sit down with the classifier, they're like, all right, cool. What would you like to do? And there's a list of jobs.
To versus Goat, the other would be to versus Fish.
Yeah,
yes.
and then and then you pick your jobs. And sometimes you can go from fish to goat.
You can go from fish to goat. They would allow a fish to go to a goat.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then, sometimes you go back to being a fish.
Oh, you go back to being fish.
That's crazy.
Some goat cannot make it as a goat and so become fish again. Do they all start as fish? And then become goat, or do they start as goat?
I think initially you would start off as fish because no matter what, we go through Great Lakes training, which is boot camp, and you're all fish when you go through there. And then when you graduate, you move on. You either graduate to being a goat or you stay a fish. For me, like a CB, we did construction combat. We flew everywhere. Didn't go on ships. But the fish, those guys, they go on ships, like your bosun's mates, hull technicians. Those are different fish jobs.
Now, you say you are a true goat, yes? Are you a true goat?
Yeah.
Then what is a bee? What is a CB? You speak of being a bee, but it does not seem that a bee is one that claims to be a goat or a fish.
It's a goddamn goat, dude.
A bee is a goat.
B just means battalion. CB, construction battalion. I mean, granted, there's a character. It's a bumblebee that's by the sea. So it's a CB, but realistically, the CB really means letters. Construction battalion. And battalion, we're goats. We're on land. With compassion for others, we build, we fight. That's the motto. And that's what we do. We build, we do humanitarian. I say we do. I'm done. I'm retired. But you go around the world, you do humanitarian assistance. We build hospitals in third world countries and like Haiti and Honduras and, places like that. And during earthquakes, and we help those out. And also in combat zones, we go with like different Marine Corps units or Navy SEALs. And they're
seals. Now you're speaking of seals. First, it is bees that are of the sea.
I know, right?
You say the bee is a goat, and yet it's still of the sea. A sea goat does sound fancifully to goat versus fish. And now you speak of a seal. Is a seal a goat or a fish? Is a seal a goat or a fish?
They can be whatever they want.
They can choose goat or fish.
Yeah, check this shit out. Sea, air, land.
The land and the sea.
Yes, it's in the name. It's fucking nuts. These guys, they jump out of planes and stuff. They swim like out of submarines. They get launched out of torpedo tubes. It's freaking, they got their little like handheld submarine power pack things. It's like they hold on to them and then they just go. It's pretty cool.
So they can be a fish when the versus requires them to be fish, and they can be goat when it requires them to be goat. Yes, they can be goat or fish. It sounds as if you are saying that in the verses of the Navy, that the goat can tell what the fish to do, that the goat can control the verses of the fish. Is this so? Is this so?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Why do the fish accept this? Is it not goat versus fish? Why would a fish accept that a goat can tell them their verses? Why do they do this in the verses of the navally verses? Confusing it is to goat versus fish.
Well, because in this scenario, the goat means an E7 or above, which is chief. And the fish would be like E6 and below. So that'd be like not chief yet. Something like that. So you haven't been promoted yet.
And yet all of these goat and fish of the navally verses, do they not accept their verses from one that some do call the president?
Yeah. Yeah. But
how do they feel? How do they feel about this one that is called Trump? Yes, this one that is called Trump. If you can even speak of these verses, wishes to build a fence. Do you know it wishes to build a fence 1,000 verses long to divide the goat from the goat so they cannot properly versus the fish? How would the navally goat or fish accept the fencitally verses of that one? How would they do it, goat?
There, I'd say a majority of the people that are working for said they actually like the guy. Not for the reasons why you think. A lot of them think he's batshit crazy. But here's the thing. He's also was one of the first people to give people back jobs. And and it wasn't so much him. It was the guy he appointed. He appointed General Mattis. And now Mad Dog Mattis is a guy we all love and respect.
Dog.
And so
fence-sitter.
Yeah. So they put Mad Dog Mattis as the Secretary of Defense. And with that being said, everybody's happy with having Mad Dog Mattis in there. So yeah, they think he's full of shit and he's crazy. A lot of them do. But at the same time, he also created a lot of jobs, so. I do have a question, though.
Questions for
Okay.
goat versus fish. What is your question for
can
goat
I sing
versus
that?
fish?
Because that sounds like a fun song.
Yes,
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yes. Goat versus fish.
Questions for goat versus fish. Should we do a tenor and should we go high and low?
We may celebrate goat versus
Let's
fish
do
as
it.
many verses as you wish, yes?
Do it.
Questions for goat versus fish.
Now, I've noticed, when you do the goat versus fish thing, is that...
Goat versus fish is always doing the goat versus fish thing.
Well, I get it. That's why I'm asking a question, man. So you do the goat is like
Sign
the
of the
slayer.
goat.
We call it slayer where I'm from. Like heavy metal horns, right? And so it's the goat horns.
It is the horn of the goat.
Horn of the goats. Fuck yeah. Oh, that explains a lot of heavy metal covers. Okay, cool. So you got that, and then you got the live long and prosper, but that's verses.
It is verses. We do wish forever verses. We do wish forever
live
verses.
long and prosper. When you were in Comic-Con, did anybody get confused when you did the verses thing for Star Trek? That V thing you do, that's like a Vulcan thing.
To boldly verses where no goat or fish has verses before, yes.
And with their ears, I think Vulcans are goats because their ears are pointy and shit.
When Goat vs. Fish was on the Killing Tony, on the verses of Kill Tony, yes, one called Doug Benson did say, what does Star Trek have to do with it? Yes, Goat vs. Fish, that was the first Goat vs. Fish has heard of the Star Trek, yes, but it has always been verses. It has always been simply the sign of the verses.
Gotcha. And then the fish is just the hand. That's do the thing. That's fish. All right, so could you walk me through can you say goat versus fish for me, please?
Yes. Goat versus fish.
All right, just don't ever angle that hand. If you angle that hand, it's a hate thing that they used to do in Germany a long time ago. I'm not sure if you're familiar with World War II, but there's this dude. He had half a mustache, called him Adolf Hitler, right? And you know how you do the fish thing? That's kind of what he did. Don't do that. It's really offensive.
Fence. You say it is like a fence because one that had half of the fur of a goat upon it. That does sound very fence-italy to goat versus fish. You have only half of the fur of the goat.
Right. It's fucking nuts.
Goat versus fish has never heard these verses before.
Goat versus fish.
Goat versus fish.
Yeah.
Goat and fish and goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish.
Do you have an album?
The celebrations of goat versus fish. That would be a celebration.
This would be fucking cool. Hell yeah, man. You should really do an album. There'd be a cool punk rock goat versus fish. And I think punk rock, those guys are those guys are goats. And then a ska version, which I think those guys would probably be fish. But that'd be cool, man. Or you know what? You probably get the group Fish to sing that song.
Even you could celebrate on the album, as you call it, of Goat versus Fish.
I'll sing.
Goat versus Fish accepts any celebration.
I'll do the heavy metal part. I work at a rock station, so maybe we can get you some airplay.
That would be pleasant to Goat versus Fish. Spread the verses to all verses.
All right, so I'm on the Frosty and Frank Morning Radio show, and I'm on there Tuesdays and Thursdays. I drive an RV, and I do meet and greets and shit, which is cool. And we have the show, a portion of the show on Fridays called Should I Stay or Should I Go? And if you did an album, Goat versus Fish, we'll get your song on Should I Stay or Should I Go?
Well, Goat versus Fish is hearing the verses of this goat. Goat versus Fish accepts your verses. Goat versus Fish trusts this goat, yes.
Yeah, so I'll just give it to Eric, and I'll be like, hey, dude. And if he likes it, he'll be like, this is so going on there. Boom. Do you ever go mash them together?
Yes, goat and fish. Goat and fish are always versing together. Yes, the horn of the goat coming on to the fish, but then the fin of the fish returns to the side of the goat to the side verses. Yes, they are always coming together as goat versus fish. Sometimes they verses so much that they form the unity of the goat fish and dispense with the verses.
Yeah, they form Voltron, but fucking goat fish thing?
Goat fish, yes. It is not so easy verses. It is not easy verses, but
That
some
doesn't
goat and
sound
fish
easy.
have done it. Some goat
So
and
if
fish
it
have
does
done
it, is it on land or is it on sea? What happens after that when they form? Or can it fly? What flies, dude? You don't have anything that flies.
Goat versus fish has heard of flying fish.
Yeah, but they don't fly long. They just skim the water.
We'll tell that to the fish that have told it to goat versus fish. When goat versus fish asks if it is a goat or a fish, then goat versus fish asks that goat or fish, what is the strength of your verses? What do you bring to the verses of goat versus fish?
Gotcha.
And goat versus fish trusts these goat and fish. What do you bring, goat? What do you bring to the verses of fish? You are a goat. What do you bring to goat versus fish? How will you aid your fellow goat in the mighty verses?
I'll give you cough drops.
Oh, you made that offering to goat versus
Yeah.
fish. Goat versus fish would have another one, yes. But goat versus fish, let us suppose that a goat comes to you and says, I am versus a mighty fish. I am versus a mighty fish. How would you aid that goat in the verses of fish? How would you aid that goat in the verses
All
of
right,
fish?
so here's what happens. I get a lot of goats. There's a thing called the season. That's when people, they go from being an E6 to 7. That's when you're a legit goat. That's when you make chief. And a lot of the weapons and tactics and things I used to teach, I would pass on some of the information that I've known as a guy that did the job of a goat for many years. And I helped them out. Like, just, good stuff to read, like who moved my cheese, stuff like that, which it's cheese could be goat. Cheese.
It sounds like a false question. Who moved my cheese? Yes, the one true question, are you
Well,
goat or
it's,
fish?
it's actually like if you get into like leadership positions, believe it or not, it's a really, really good book to get into, because like the cheese would be like your position, right? You got to figure out how to do your job. And then when you get there, then you hand your cheese out to everybody else. So you figure out who moved my cheese. And then after you do your job, then you teach everybody else how to do your job. And then you get promoted again, and then your cheese gets moved. And you got to go find it. It's like a maze. And you got to run all the way through. You just keep doing it.
Have you ever ended a goat or a fish?
Have I ever ended a goat or a fish? Like,
yes, in the navally verses. Some of them do end other goat and fish, yes. Have you ever ended a goat or a fish? It is serious verses. It is serious verses.
That's kind of like, I don't really talk about that kind of stuff because, when goat and fish end, you kind of did your job, but at the same time, you kind of feel bad. But I'll tell you what, no matter what goat and fish is out there, I always try to save them. Even if I don't like said goat or fish, no matter what. But if you're in a situation and you had to get rid of said goat or fish, it's you or me. Bye, motherfucker.
You protect your own goat. You protect your
Goddamn
goat.
right. That's what we got to do.
Goat versus fish does not wish the end of any goat or fish.
No.
Less goat or fish is less goat
No.
versus fish.
You don't want to end unless they're trying to end you. And that's part of the job.
You have also said that part of your verses is to protect the ones from the earthquake. You did mention the earthquake,
yeah,
yes?
It's crazy. Mhm.
When the land of the goat does turn against the very goat that are of the land, yes?
Not just earthquakes, tsunamis, you name it. Tsunamis are water, hurricanes.
It is the sea.
It's the sea turning against the sea. So like, for example, just most recently, a couple of years ago before I retired in Okinawa, we had tsunamis and stuff like that. So we're trying to get potable water to these people and, clean a lot of that area up so that they can live and have power. So we'll bring generators, and that way the goats can have, and the fish can have water and power, and, because all fish need air conditioning, right?
Even fence sitters, do even to the fence sitters
You
make
know
these
what?
offerings?
Fence sitters, as much, no matter how much cocksuckers those guys are, and I'm not saying cocksucking is a bad thing. I like a lot of people that do that. Thanks, ladies. But the thing is even the fence sitters, though, I mean, they're people too.
They are goat or fish. They are goat or fish.
They just
Deep within them, they are
know.
goat or fish.
Yeah, but
Deep
they're
within
sitting on the
them.
fence. They don't know where the fuck they're gonna go. Son of a bitch. Oh, by the way, if you're listening, I threw a card.
Goat versus fish is now accepting offerings to goat versus fish. It is sweet offerings to goat versus fish, meant to soothe goat versus fish, meant to
I'm
soothe
telling you
goat
what.
versus fish.
Mr. Goat vs. Fish King, dude, whatever the fuck you are. The 7-Eleven ones are better than the Hulls. And you're chewing it. Hey, dude, I'll give you another one. Like, just chew that one and finish that one up. But do you know what? Do you want chewing tobacco? You should eat it the same way you're eating this. Just kidding. I'll give you another one, but this one, don't chew it. What you want to do is put it in the back of your mouth. Here you go.
Now it is time for the verses of goat or fish. Are you prepared for the questioning? Are you prepared for the questioning?
Can I talk now? Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Matthew C. Perry, goat or fish?
Who the fuck is that?
Goat versus fish has heard that it was a very, very well-known navally versing one, yes?
Perry. Admiral Perry?
Goat or fish?
Yeah, fish.
It is a fish.
Yeah, sure.
Tell us of this fish. Tell us of the verses of this fish.
Really don't, haven't had a whole lot of interaction. You know, just good fish. You know what I mean? You don't have to not like, just because somebody's a fish, you're a goat, don't mean you can't be friends. Good dude. Don't really interact much. Good people.
Though there is no good or evil.
It's just it's like, dude, we're just, look, I might like heavy metal, you might like hip hop. I might like Wendy's, you definitely look like you like Burger King. So
Goat versus fish has heard these verses. They do say, it is the Burger King. It is the Burger King. They say to goat versus fish, but it is goat versus fish. Goat versus fish must always tell them it is goat versus fish.
Yeah.
It's goat versus fish.
How do you feel when people lay a whopper on like that on you?
Oh, have you just come from the shower? Goat versus fish has heard all of these fancifully verses. Goat versus fish must say, it is goat versus fish. It is goat versus fish. It is goat versus fish. Do you know how many verses in a verse is goat versus fish must say that it is goat versus fish? It is goat versus fish.
What is it?
Goat versus fish.
All right, just checking.
Popeye the Sailor. Goat or fish?
Oh, he's a goat.
That is
He's
a goat.
Fucking goat. He's got an anchor tattooed on his arm. He's a goat.
Did you service with this goat?
No, I did not service the goat or serve with that goat. I don't service goats. I did have a dude, we used to call him Popeye, though.
Is that so? Let us hear this evidence. If that one was goat or fish, was that one also goat?
Yeah, he was a goat. He was a bad motherfucker. He was out of Team 4 when we were in Little Creek, Virginia. I used to swim a lot of times there at their pool. But I was a goat that swam in a pool. So, I did fishly activities, but I'm still a fucking goat.
Still a fucking goat. Beware, fish. This goat knows how to verses in the sea. Very clever in its verses of the sea.
Yeah, I'm an amphibious goat.
Are many of the goat and fish in the navally place both versing on land and sea cleverly?
Yeah, well, yeah. Those SEAL people I was talking about, those guys are badass. I wasn't anywhere in the same ballpark as those guys. Those guys would be like rock stars. I'd be more like the roadie, But we have to know how to do the same things, but not as badass.
Is there a goat or fish of the navally verses that you, goat, would say deserves to be recognized by more goat or fish? Now is the verses that you could speak of that goat or fish to all the ones who listen to Goat versus Fish.
All right, so I don't get the question.
You have verses with many goat and fish in the navally place, yes? You spend many verses there. Is there a goat or fish that has gone unrecognized by other goat or fish that you say brought wonderful verses?
Yeah. There's one goat that really shaped my life and maybe some of you guys. There's a show called Airwolf. And Ernest Borgnine, he was also a guy who was in The Dirty Dozen and a lot of other. He was a cab driver in Escape from New York. Ernest Borgnine was one of my heroes, and he was a goat. He was a Navy goat. A lot of people don't realize that, but the thing was, he did a lot of USO stuff. Like Bob Hope really wasn't a service member, but Ernest Borgnine was. And what this guy did was contribute to parks, and he'd buy playground equipment for a lot of these cities and stuff like that. And one of the things that he did, he never made it like me. He never made it to chief, but he was an honorary chief because he did so many things in the community. Ernest Borgnine is one of my heroes.
Some may approach you, goat. Some may approach you, goat. And they may say to you, thank you for your services.
Right.
Thank you for your services. Goat versus Fish has heard on the word of your very goatly podcast. Yes, what is that podcast?
It's called Civilianization. And the reason why I do it is because there's no book on how to be a civilian. There's no verses of like how to go from goat to fish and fish to goat and stuff like that. It's just like trying to figure out, all right, you're like stuck in fence sitter world. You know what I mean? You're like,
unpleasant.
Hey, I know. That's basically fence sitter world. I feel bad. That's like, what's that? Ring of Hell? Limbo or whatever? I don't
Goat
know.
versus Fish does not know these verses, yes.
Yeah, fuck those verses anyway.
Now, you have many verses. You have many verses of that verses of the podcast, yes? But if you could make those verses into a short verses for Goat versus Fish, explain how one from the navally place going to the civilian-y place, as you do call them, from becoming goat to fish or fish to goat.
Well, it's just okay, man. It's okay to be a civilian. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay to, because you don't know where you fit in the world, and you're trying to figure out who the fuck you are because you just did something that's very important for 5 to 20 years, and you're like, one day you could get on a phone and be like, I need a helicopter to land right here, and we gotta go do this shit, and the next thing you know, you can barely get a fucking Uber. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to do, is just help out. We just had a guy on there talking about veteran benefits and stuff like that, and it was pretty cool.
Now you say that it is okay to have the emotions, yes?
Yeah.
Is this to say that when you are versing in the navally place or the armily place that you cannot have a feeling? Is that what it is to say?
No. Well, the thing is, it's like you can have feelings, but the thing is, you kind of suck it up a little bit. It's not the time or place to worry about that shit.
Always focused on the verses. Let's get
this verses done. And then focus on that when you get home. And then after that, it's like a star athlete. You're see these goats, they have a game, like, I don't know, trying to get to the end of the game. And at the end of the game, it's time to go home. So when you hit the showers and you're done playing football or baseball, you're like, oh, what the fuck do I do with being a regular person? It's the same thing in the military.
So when the ones do say to you, thank you for your verses, is it not so simple a thing to simply say, well, I welcome your verses. I welcome your verses. Man. Or why is it such a difficult thing to say?
I always just say thanks for paying taxes, just as a joke, and it's a thank you for,
because you are a comedian one that does tell the jokes, yes?
I try.
Yes, that is the ways of the ones, yes? Albamani one, yes? The comedian ones, they tell jokes, yes? Clever Goat versus Fish.
Yeah.
What do you say to the goat?
Enjoy being a goat. And it's cool if people are fish, then let people be fish. Let fish be fish, and be a goat and stuff, and like you guys can like exist in the same world as goat and fish. It's all right. And if you're a fence sitter, pick something, pick a direction. Life is basically like you're standing on an X. There's an anvil falling from the sky, and you're basically the road runner. You got to figure out what direction you want to go. Do you want to be a fish? Do you want to be a goat? You got to go in some direction, motherfucker. Go, pick it, be happy, and then when you do it, commit. Stick with the direction. Go in that direction. Stay with it. Stay the course.
Now, we have heard, Goat, what you would say to the goat. And in saying what you would say to the goat, you have said what you would say to the fish and to the fence sitter as well.
I would just flip-flop the whole thing and be like, look, guys, it's cool. Accept who we are. Be happy with who everybody else is. And accept that, man.
What do you say to Goat versus Fish?
This was fucking weird. That's about it.
And it was written that it was fucking weird, yes? Thank you for being a part of Goat versus Fish.
No, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Always thank Goat versus Fish. Always thank Goat versus Fish.
I'm not going to thank you anymore. I don't really like when people tell me what to do.
Goat versus Fish will not tell you what to do now, but Goat versus Fish does request something of this goat.
Oh, what's up, dude?
Would you say with Goat versus Fish, together we say, Goat versus Fish?
Yes and no. We can't say it. We got to sing it.
Yes. Yes.
Just do it.
And now Goat and Fish is the verses for celebration of Goat versus Fish.
Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Goat versus fish, 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 fish. Goat, goat, goat. Fish, fish, fish. Don't be a bitch and sit on a fence.
Don't be a bitch and sit on the fence.
Be a goat or a fish. Don't be a bitch.
Or a fish.
Or don't be a bitch. Yeah, that's good. Huh?
There is no good or evil, there's only Goat and Fish, but oh, it was pleasant to Goat versus Fish.
Dude.
It was pleasant to Goat versus Fish. Celebration! Now, Goat, Would you tell the ones who listen, yes, the goat and fish, and even a fence sitter who do listen, how to hear more verses from this one, how to follow this one if they wish?
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for asking. Yeah, I'm at Josh96 O'Brien, Obrien, on Instagram, Twitter, and all that other stuff. And as you said, I do produce a couple podcasts. I produce the Comedy Source podcast here. I do mine, Civilianization, here. I do Simply Don, the podcast. I help Don Barris out on his. And so, yeah, man, if you dig any of those, please follow me. And also, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 95.5 KLOS between 6 and 9:30. Fuck yeah.
Listen to those verses. Follow this goat, for it has many verses, many goatly verses. Now, GoatVsFish knows that it is not you who is choosing whether or not to welcome GoatVsFish, but may GoatVsFish ask from GoatVsFish to this goat. Do you wish to hear more GoatVsFish at the Comedy Store Los Angeles, a place of GoatVsFish?
Not really. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, actually, this is fun, man. You know, this is definitely an interesting thing. It's different. I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. Like, I kind of got an idea what the fuck fence sitter is. I have no clue what a fish or a goat really is. I've used 3 different examples of goats. Sure.
Now GoatVsFish will say some closing verses.
Okay, cool. I've never wanted fucking Burger King so bad in my life. But go ahead.
Thank you for joining Goat vs. Fish. These are the verses of Goat vs. Fish.
These are the verses of Goat vs. Fish.
These are the verses of Goat vs. Fish.
These are the verses of Goat vs. Fish.
These are the verses of Goat vs. Fish. Subscribe, rate, and review the GoatVsFish podcast on the YouTube and the Ite-Oons. Follow GoatVsFish on all social media. On the Instagram, on the Book of Faces, on the Twitterver. All at GoatVsFish, all at GoatVsFish. And if you wish to witness a live verses of GoatVsFish at one of the comedy places or conventions, go to GoatVsFish.com to find the places and times of all future verses. The theme celebration for this verses was an offering by McKinley on SoundCloud of Fish. And if you, one who listens, has a celebration of GoatVsFish, in song or poem or any other celebration, do send it to GoatVsFish@gmail.com or on the social media. Join the GoatVsFish discussion group on the Book of Faces to discuss Goat versus Fish with other fish and goat, and even a fence sitter. And when you are out in the land and the sea, look about you. Look about you. Find one who is lost. Find one who does not know the way. And ask. Simply ask. Are you goat or are you fish? These are the verses of Goat vs. Fish. I am Goat vs. Fish, the Goat Fish.
Hell yeah.
And it was written, and it was written.
But here's the thing, Goat versus Fish. When you explain them, they're no longer jokes anymore. And that's what sucks.
Now, Goat, do you promise to be a true goat?
Yeah.
A goat in all things goat.
Sure.
And forever versus the fish.
Scout's honor.
Oh, that is your goat?
That was, yeah.
That is a curious goat, but
well,
if it is goat...
Trustworthy, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, reverent. It was a Boy Scout thing.
It is a trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent goat.
Yes.
What a goat. What a splendid goat.
Yeah.
Goat for this goat. It is goat for this goat. It is goat for this goat.
Cool.
We celebrate this goat. We celebrate this goat. Now it is time for the visages, goat, yes? But do you have any final verses for the goat and fish and perhaps even a fence sitter?
Get off the fence. Be a goat or a fish.
Get off of the fence. Choose goat or fish. Do you know how much Goat versus Fish is trying to versus? Can barely even versus, and yet you still sit on the fence. Why do you sit on the... Choose goat or fish. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Goat... Where's the fence sitter? Where's the fence? Where's the fence? Goat versus fish.
Goat versus Fish is, I need you to like, subscribe, share, comment on all Goat versus Fish platforms: YouTube, iTunes, Facebook, Instagram. Please find out what you are. It is very important to know whether you are a goat or you are a fish. It will change your life.